Welcome back to the bench. Today we got for repair a 512K RAM expansion for an Amiga 500 or 500 plus. As you can see, the main culprit of the problem was a leaking battery. It's leaked pretty good all over the board. You can see there the edge is green. The trace that runs along the top here is pretty much completely gone. It's all peeling away. We look here. This looks better. I have actually cleaned this in some white vinegar. Before that was very green. Greener than the actual solder mask on the board. A few of the pads have come off here, which is no great loss because, you know, these are for extra chips and they're not populated and they won't be populated. So it's not a problem. And over here, all these components, yeah, all the legs are kind of greenish. The little crystal itself probably looks like it's on its last legs, so we can replace that. What I want to do is I just want to strip off all the through-hole components off of this board, and then replace all the resistors, capacitors and diodes. Socket the RTC, and then get this bent back into shape. As you can see, it's at a funny angle compared to the board, so obviously it's had some grief in its life. So, and yeah, and if you can see it, the contacts in there with the board are pretty crusty. So in order to get in there and get those properly cleaned, you'd have to desolder this entire connector as well. So that's what I'll do. I'll probably leave these capacitors here because they don't seem to have been affected. But yeah, all the rest are going to go. And rather than sit here and bore you with me desoldering all this, you know, we'll just you know, cut to when I've got it completely desoldered. Catch you in a moment. Okay, so now we have all these components removed. We can take a better look at the board. I decided not to remove the connector because the fit in the holes is so very tight that the chances of getting it out without destroying the traces is remote. So I cleaned up the board. It seems the main trace that suffered the brunt of the damage is this ground plane trace here. It goes to a couple of wires. One of them it's no longer connected to, so once we reconnect that, hopefully the board should come back to life. We'll have to put the obviously the resistors back in there and this capacitor, but all these components here are to do with the RTC, so we can leave those off for now for testing. Here are the components that actually came off. Let's zoom in, and you can see that things like here, this capacitor, I'll get my hand in the right place, focus, yeah, just disintegrated along with, you know, some of these resistors. The legs were just rotten, or the bodies were just rotten. So yeah, it was a good job we decided to replace those because, you know, they're absolutely knackered. The resistor packs are okay. Gave the legs a bit of a clean up. Focus. So yeah, those can go back in. Yep, and we'll just fix this trace here. Okay, let's zoom out a bit. So it's just the one trace to fix, so it shouldn't be too difficult. Where's my wire strippers? What I'm going to do is there's a wire here and there's a wire here, so I can just put in literally put in a link wire from there to there, and then another one to here, and it should be good to go. I don't worry too much about cutting onto the exact length. I just want to get it in there, and then we can solder them up and give it a try. Okay, should just fit through the hole, the wire. Yeah, it's only a thin gauge wire. That's it. So it's one big wire in. There's a solder. So hopefully the wire will take the solder. The solder mask is actually quite close to the edge. Okay, it has done on that side. I need my magnifying glass. My eyes are not so good. Yeah, okay, so that has taken the solder. Okay, and then we just need to run a connection from that via, and then we'll have to connect that over to the ground plane. There isn't another wire on the other side, so I'll just need to take off a bit more of that solder mask so that I can have some bare area to connect it to. Get that in shot. That should do. Just take a bit of solder mask off this side as well, to make it a little bit easier to solder. Wire falling out? Not quite. Might too much solder on there. Gonna make it look pretty. That'll do for now. Okay, and then we just need to attach it to this bare area. Okay, so that should be our trace fixed. So that should allow the board to run again. Before I can test it, obviously I have to, that's my multimeter turning off, resolder in these resistor arrays, and then we can see if she chooches. So I'll do that off camera, because I don't think you want me to see me solder all these in, and then we'll resume in a minute. Okay, so I plug this in to test it, and unfortunately she doesn't chooch. The high probability is that one or more of these chips are faulty. It could be that the board just didn't work even before the battery had leaked. Because these are a type of surface mount chip where the legs curl underneath the chips. I have no way to desolder these and test them independently. So I think we're going to call this one a fail on this repair. The good thing is, hopefully the clock chip is still functional, even though a few of the legs were a bit shorter for some reason. They must have snapped off during production. So hopefully we can get this chip working, and we can reuse it in a different RAM expansion if we get one that's got a faulty clock chip on it. So I'll have to do some testing, see if this one works. I do have another RAM expansion board installed in an Amiga, so I can test this chip to see if it's still good. So yeah, unfortunately, big fat fail. When I first plugged it in without the jumper on, it didn't work. The Amiga wouldn't boot. I took a look at the chips, and I could see that on this chip, one of the legs wasn't actually making contact with the pad. This chip is been put in and it's slightly off at an angle, so it was barely making any contact with the pads. It would have been like that from the factory. So I managed to move that back into place and solder it, and then it would boot without the jumper on there, which is obviously the RAM expansion is disabled. But as soon as you put the jumper on there to enable the RAM expansion, I just got an orange screen and a flashing power light. So yeah, I tried reflowing all the solder joints just to see if I could get it to work, but unfortunately, yeah, there was no chance. What I might do is I may try to I'll definitely salvage this connector off here and probably the resistor packs. What I'll try to do is actually make my own RAM expansion, possibly. I've got the components for the chips. I can probably look up the circuit diagram for the clock circuit, so it might be an interesting little project. Make it kind of like just a short board, maybe half the size of what this one is. Maybe even make a 1 meg board if I can get some 3-hole chips to put on there rather than these funny SMD devices. So if you liked the video and liked the disappointment of not being able to get it fixed, then do me a favor, hit that subscribe button, and you can also ring the bell icon to get notified when I upload new videos. So that's it for now. Thanks for watching, and I will catch you next time.